Welcome, friends. In our time together today, we will explore a profound truth that has the power to transform our lives. The closer you are to wisdom, the farther you are from ego. This is a journey inward, to the very core of our being, where we can uncover the essence of true wisdom and learn to let go of the ego that so often holds us back. As we begin, let us consider what wisdom truly means. It is not simply the accumulation of knowledge or the ability to recite facts and figures. Wisdom is the deep understanding that comes from experience, from the trials and triumphs that shape our lives. It is the insight that enables us to see beyond the superficial and connect with the underlying truths of existence. Wisdom is knowing the right path to take, not because someone told you it is correct, but because you feel it in the marrow of your bones. Now, let's turn our attention to the ego. The ego is our sense of self-importance, the part of us that craves recognition and fears being overlooked. It is the voice that whispers of our superiority or our inadequacy, depending on the day. And while it is a natural part of the human experience, the ego often leads us astray, away from wisdom and into the realm of superficial judgments and petty grievances. The first lesson in our exploration is this: wisdom invites humility, while ego demands prominence. When we act from a place of wisdom, we recognize that we are but a small part of a vast universe. We understand that our knowledge is limited, our experiences are finite, and that there is always more to learn. This humility opens us up to new perspectives and ideas, allowing us to grow and evolve. In contrast, the ego seeks to elevate our status, to make us feel important and powerful. But this is a fleeting satisfaction, as the ego is never truly satiated. It always wants more attention, more validation, more assurance of its worth. This constant striving creates a barrier between us and the world around us, preventing us from connecting with others in a meaningful way. So, how do we move from ego to wisdom? It starts with observation. We must become keen observers of our own thoughts and reactions. When you feel a surge of pride or a twinge of jealousy, take a moment to examine that feeling. Where does it come from? What is it trying to tell you? By understanding the motivations behind our emotions, we can begin to see how the ego operates within us. But observation alone is not enough. We must also practice letting go. This means releasing our need for control, our desire for approval, and our fear of insignificance. It is a process of unburdening ourselves from the expectations we have placed on our shoulders, both from within and from the world at large. Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lessons. Letting go is not an act of weakness, it is an act of strength. It takes courage to step back from the ego and its demands. But in doing so, we make space for wisdom to enter our lives. We create room for a deeper connection with ourselves and with others. Now, consider the times when you have felt truly at peace. What were the qualities of those moments? Were they defined by a sense of accomplishment and pride, or were they characterized by a deep sense of connection and understanding? Often, our most profound experiences are not the result of ego-driven pursuits, but are born from moments of genuine connection and insight. This brings us to the practical advice for this part of our journey. Cultivate practices that foster inner peace and connection. This might mean spending time in nature, engaging in meditation or prayer, or simply sitting quietly and listening to the world around you. These practices help quiet the ego and allow wisdom to emerge. As we close this first part of our exploration, I would like to leave you with a question. What would your life look like if you allowed wisdom to lead the way, rather than the ego? Reflect on this as we prepare to continue our journey into understanding the relationship between wisdom and ego. The dance of detachment. Embracing wisdom over ego. In the second chapter of our exploration, we will delve into the art of detachment. Detachment is often misunderstood as a cold or uncaring state, but in truth, it is a warm embrace of wisdom that allows us to interact with the world freely and lovingly, unencumbered by the weight of ego. To understand detachment, we must first examine our attachments. Attachments are the emotional bonds we form with our possessions, our beliefs, and even our self-image. They are the anchors of the ego, keeping us tethered to a specific identity or outcome. But wisdom tells us that life is in a constant state of flux, and these anchors can become prisons if we cling to them too tightly. Wisdom encourages us to hold our attachments lightly, to appreciate and enjoy them without becoming dependent on them for our sense of self-worth. It teaches us that our true value lies not in what we have or achieve, but in the quality of our presence and the depth of our understanding. Detachment does not mean we do not care. It means we care deeply but without attachment to the result. We give our best to the world, not because we seek praise or reward, but because it is an expression of our true selves. We love without the need for reciprocation. We share without the expectation of gain, and we engage with others without the demand for agreement. This level of detachment is profoundly liberating. It frees us from the fear of loss, the pain of rejection, and the bitterness of failure. It allows us to experience life more fully, with a heart open to whatever comes our way. In this state, we can truly listen, truly see, and truly connect with the world around us. But how do we cultivate such detachment? It starts with self-reflection. We must look within and ask ourselves, what am I clinging to? What fears are driving my attachments? As we shine a light on these areas, we begin to see how they influence our thoughts and actions. The next step is to embrace impermanence. Everything in life is subject to change. Our relationships, our jobs, our bodies, even our thoughts and feelings. When we accept this, we can enjoy the beauty of each moment without grasping at it. We can let go of the past and the future and live fully in the present. It is also essential to practice forgiveness. Holding on to grudges or regrets is a form of attachment that binds us to the past. Forgiveness allows us to release these bonds and move forward with grace. It is a gift we give ourselves, a declaration of freedom from the ego's narratives. Finally, we must learn to trust in the flow of life. This means having faith that, even when things do not go as planned, there is a larger order at work. It is an acknowledgement of our limited perspective and an openness to the possibilities that lie beyond our understanding. As we integrate these practices into our lives, we will notice a shift. Our interactions with others will be characterized by a sense of ease and authenticity. Our decisions will be guided by inner wisdom rather than external pressures. And our lives will be marked by a sense of purpose that transcends the desires of the ego. So I leave you with a question to reflect on before we move to the next part. How might your relationships change if you approach them with detachment, free from the need for validation or control? Harmony in humility. The subtle strength of wisdom. As we venture further into the depths of understanding, we arrive at a crucial lesson on the path to wisdom, the quiet, unassuming power of humility. Humility, in its truest form, is the soul's acknowledgement of its own limitations and the vastness of what lies beyond personal knowing. It is in this acknowledgement that we find the fertile ground for wisdom to flourish. Humility is often mistaken for self-deprecation or a lack of confidence, but this is a misconception. True humility is rooted in a confident understanding of one's place in the cosmos, not as the center, but as a part of the intricate tapestry of existence. When we embrace humility, we allow ourselves to become students of life, open to learning from every experience and every being we encounter. The ego resists humility, for it sees it as a threat to its survival. The ego thrives on separation, on the idea that we are distinct and above or below others. Wisdom, however, perceives the interconnectedness of all things and recognizes that each entity has something valuable to contribute to our understanding. When we operate from wisdom, we see the ego's attempts to segregate and elevate as unnecessary and counterproductive. One of the most profound exercises in humility is in the acknowledgement that we do not have all the answers. This is not a sign of weakness, but a declaration of openness to the myriad lessons life has to offer. It is in the moments when we admit we do not know that we become most receptive to wisdom. In practical terms, embracing humility can involve listening more than we speak, seeking to understand before seeking to be understood, and appreciating the varied ways in which others express their truths. It can mean stepping back to allow others to shine, offering support without the expectation of acknowledgement, and celebrating the successes of others as if they were our own. Humility also involves the recognition of our own fallibility. We are all works in progress, and as such, we will make mistakes. But in every error, there is a lesson waiting to be learned. When we approach our mistakes with humility, we can glean the wisdom they have to offer without being ensnared by guilt or shame. In cultivating humility, we must also be mindful of false humility, which is the ego in disguise. False humility seeks to draw attention to one's own self-effacement, turning humility into another form of self-promotion. True humility does not announce itself, it simply is. It does not aim to impress others but to serve the greater good. So, as we continue on this path, let us consider how humility can transform our interactions with others. When we approach others with the recognition that they may hold a piece of wisdom we lack, we become better listeners, better collaborators, and ultimately, wiser beings. Reflect on the times when you have learned something valuable from an unexpected source. How did that experience change your perception of the person or situation? How did it change you? Now, as we prepare to move into the final part of our discussion, let us hold this question in our hearts. How might our lives unfold differently if we allowed humility to guide our actions rather than ego? The illuminated path. Ego's eclipse by the light of wisdom. In our final passage through the landscape of self-discovery, we arrive at a vantage point where the full panorama of our journey unfolds before us. This is the summit of our exploration, where we witness the transformation that occurs when wisdom eclipses the ego, revealing an illuminated path forward. At this juncture, we recognize that the ego, with its cacophony of desires and demands, has been quietly overtaken by the serene and steady light of wisdom. It is not that the ego has vanished, rather, it has been integrated into a larger, more harmonious self-concept, one that serves rather than dominates, that aligns with universal truths rather than transient whims. The ego, once the master storyteller of our identity, becomes a character within a grander narrative. It is still present, still contributing its voice, but it no longer dictates the plot. Instead, wisdom authors our life story, infusing it with depth, meaning, and connection. As we embrace this shift, we find that our actions are imbued with a greater sense of purpose. They are less about proving something to the world and more about expressing our truest selves. Our interactions with others are marked by authenticity and compassion, as we see ourselves in them and them in us. This unity of being does not mean that we lose our individuality. On the contrary, we become more genuinely ourselves, unshackled by the need for external validation. Our unique talents and insights are offered freely, adding to the collective wisdom of humanity. On this illuminated path, we also discover the power of vulnerability. The ego sees vulnerability as a weakness, a chink in the armor it has so painstakingly built. But wisdom understands that vulnerability is a strength, a channel through which we connect with others in our most authentic form. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we open the door to true intimacy and understanding. We admit that we do not have all the answers, that we need others, and that together we are stronger. This is the essence of community, of collective wisdom, which far exceeds the sum of its parts. In this final part of our exploration, we also acknowledge that the illuminated path is not a static destination. It is a way of traveling through life, a mode of being that we cultivate and maintain through ongoing practice. It requires mindfulness, the willingness to reflect and adjust, and the courage to let go again and again. As we walk this path, we find that joy, peace, and fulfillment are not dependent on external circumstances, but are states that we generate from within. They are the natural byproducts of a life lived in alignment with wisdom, a life in which the ego has been transmuted into a tool for growth rather than a barrier to it.